Finding a home that gives you plenty of space without draining your bank account isn't easy. But if you're willing to look beyond the biggest cities, you might be surprised by what's out there. Across small towns and overlooked suburbs, enormous mansions are selling for less than $300,000. They have the space, the luxury, and the price most buyers dream about. So this is a list of some of the cheapest mansions that for some reason nobody wants to buy. The Pony Express home. At 1301 South Street in Lexington, Missouri, just 45 minutes from Kansas City, there is a 9-bedroom, 7-bathroom estate built in 1840, listed for only $125,000. Lexington is a town where nearly everything has a historical connection. Embedded in the exterior of the local courthouse is an actual cannonball, still lodged there from the 1861 Battle of Lexington, fought less than 2 decades after the house itself was built. This particular estate was also once the home of William Bradford Waddell, one of the founders of the Pony Express, the short-lived mail relay service that became a legend of the American West. At 9,000 square feet, the place is genuinely massive, and it sits just blocks from Main Street's shops and cafes, so it isn't isolated. Being 45 minutes from Kansas City means commuters looking for space over convenience could make it work without giving up big city access entirely. The honest catch is that it's a fixer-upper, and it comes bundled with renovation work that scares off casual buyers even at a rock-bottom price. The home on the range. This home is listed for $299,000, located just off Highway 259 in Texas at 2023 South Henderson Boulevard. Its design pays direct homage to Frank Lloyd Wright, and for good reason. It was built in 1939 by an architect who studied under Wright himself. The house sits on almost 6 acres, with a large terrace that overlooks a private pond. So the outdoor living space feels like as much of a feature as anything inside. Inside, the unusual tile work and built-ins are the kind of period details that a lot of renovated homes lose entirely. Paired here with modern updates that make the place livable by today's standards, rather than a strict museum piece. At 5,900 square feet with 4 bedrooms, there's plenty of room to spread out, and the location just off the highway offers easy access to a nearby college, which should, in theory, widen the pool of potential buyers rather than shrink it. And yet it sits unsold. While architectural significance is a wonderful thing to read about in a listing, it doesn't automatically translate into demand, especially in a rural Texas market, where most buyers are shopping by bedroom count and price per square foot, rather than by pedigree. Magnificent Manor, the Castle. Scranton, Pennsylvania's 6th largest city, is home to a 7,840 square foot property that locals have nicknamed simply the Castle. It's listed at $300,000, and once you see it, the price makes a lot more sense than the nickname might suggest. This 9-bedroom, 10-bathroom home has been restored to its full Tudor Revival glory. Outside, a charming cobblestone driveway leads up to the entrance. Inside, stunning molding and woodwork show up in nearly every room, alongside stained glass windows and window seats that add character. Every detail seems designed to make you forget you're in Scranton at all, closer to something you'd expect on the English countryside than in a former coal town in northeastern Pennsylvania. The extras push it firmly into mansion territory. A billiards room, a private gym, and a 3-stall carriage house that once would have housed horses and now could easily hold a small car collection. Scranton has a complicated real estate story of its own. Once a booming coal and railroad city, it lost a huge share of its population and industry across the 20th century as mining work dried up, and it's still working to reinvent its economy today. That history matters because a house this grand was originally built for a much wealthier, much larger version of the city than exists now. What makes this one frustrating, from a seller's point of view, is that everything about the house works. It's been lovingly restored, not left to rot. It's a short drive from downtown shops, restaurants, and nightlife. What the castle needs is a new owner who wants to live in Scranton. But that is proving harder to find than the house itself ever was to restore. Silver Point. This 3-story Georgian mansion on Ripley's Colonial Row, Silver Point, comes in at 5,620 square feet, across 23 rooms, 6 bedrooms, and 5 bathrooms. It once carried an asking price of $275,000, but was sold for $125,000. The house was built in 1841 by Samuel Hemphill, reportedly the wealthiest man in the Ohio River Valley at the time, and he built the house for his new bride the same year he settled in town. The nickname for the home came from reports that Hemphill paid the men who cut wood for passing steamboats in actual silver coin, unusual currency for the era, and the name stuck to the property long after the practice stopped. The house later passed to Rear Admiral Albert Kautz, who married one of Hemphill's daughters and was well connected enough in Washington that Presidents Ulysses S. Grant and Rutherford B. Hayes both reportedly visited while he lived there. None of that history moved the price. What did was location and upkeep. A 23-room mansion built for a 19th-century merchant family comes with too much space and too much restoration work for the size of the local buyer pool. One architectural researcher who studied the home compared its proportions to the 5th-century Temple of Neptune in Greece, which was a genuinely rare detail for a private residence. But rare detail doesn't offset the cost of maintaining multiple fireplaces and carved woodwork across 5,000 square feet in a town this size. For the next mansion on this list, buyers ignored it not only for its location, but because decades after being on the cover page of a magazine, it has sadly gone out of style. The Country Escape. On Raris Road, in a Little Rock, Arkansas suburb, there's an 8-acre estate that feels like a private resort with its in-ground pool, 3 separate stone fireplaces, and a wet bar, all wrapped into 5,300 square feet listed at $300,000. This one actually had its moment in the spotlight. The home's design once caught the attention of Better Homes and Gardens, which featured the property in its pages. Most listings never get anywhere near that level of recognition. The honest problem, based on the available photos, is that the place looks a little dated now and could use some updating. For 8 acres of land with a pool and multiple fireplaces at this price point, that's a fairly small ask in exchange for the space and privacy on offer. Country properties like this tend to be judged less on move-in-ready polish and more on the bones of the land itself, and by that measure, this one still checks a lot of boxes. So, what's keeping a place like this lingering on the market comes down to timing and taste, rather than anything wrong with the house. Style and fashion appears to have moved on without the house. A fresh coat of paint and an updated kitchen may turn this back into cover-worthy material, but only time will tell. The Handsome Home. This Edwardian home sits on Washington Street in Shelbyville, Indiana. Built in 1900, once listed at $238,000. At 7,520 square feet, spread across 17 rooms. Walking inside the home shows you immediately how this mansion got its name. There are hand-carved woodwork, stained glass windows, and 10-foot ceilings that make even an ordinary hallway feel like a formal room. Outside, handsome turrets give the house its distinctive silhouette, the kind you'd expect on a much pricier property. 17 rooms is enough that a new owner could dedicate entire floors to different purposes without ever feeling cramped. A home office wing, a guest wing, a formal entertaining floor, and a lot more creative options. And then there's the third floor, which was built out as a full ballroom. It's a feature that essentially no modern buyer is looking for, but it instantly tells you what kind of house this used to be. Location-wise, it's hard to complain. The house sits within walking distance of Shelbyville's historic downtown and its charming town square, and it's an easy stroll to the local farmers market on Saturdays. Edwardian houses of this style were built in the decade or two after the turn of the 20th century, when architects leaned into ornamentation. Turrets, stained glass, oversized rooms. Right before that style fell out of fashion for good, replaced by simpler, cheaper-to-build homes. While it isn't hard to see why the handsome home earned its name, given the taste of the modern buyer, it's also quite easy to explain why, at such a steal price, it's still waiting for someone to walk through the door and say yes. Stained glass and hand-carved trim look wonderful in photographs, but they also mean specialized repairs whenever something cracks or warps, at a cost most modern contractors can't quote off the top of their heads. 17 rooms and a ballroom might be a lot for the modern buyer. But how outrageous is a 9-bedroom mansion? The rural retreat. The entire town of Wild Rose, Wisconsin has a population of under 725 people, and that's where you'll find the rural retreat, a 9-bedroom, 7.5-bathroom mansion that comes in at just under 10,000 square feet, sitting on 2.5 acres, priced at only $279,000. On paper, that's an incredible deal. 10,000 square feet for less than the median price of a starter home in most American cities. The mansion used to run as a bed and breakfast, so the layout is already built for guests instead of one family rattling around in empty rooms. There's a huge barn on the property that's been fully redone on the inside, useful as storage or event space for whoever takes it on, and a pioneer museum just 1 block away where visitors can dig into the village's history before heading back to the house for the night. The catch is everything around it. Wild Rose sits far from any city large enough to generate steady demand for a mansion this size. Small towns like this one have watched their populations shrink for decades as younger residents move toward bigger regional job markets, a pattern that shows up across rural Wisconsin and much of the rural Midwest. That kind of decline doesn't just affect jobs and schools. It affects who's even in the market to buy a 9-bedroom house in the first place. Whoever eventually buys it will need a specific reason to want 9 bedrooms in a village of 725 people. Sportsman's Paradise. Georgetown, South Carolina, is an old rice and timber country, sitting where the Black River meets the coast. And it's here that the Sportsman's Paradise is asking just $299,500 for 5,400 square feet of living space on a half-acre cul-de-sac lot. 4 bedrooms, each with its own private bath. Nothing about the floor plan requires a buyer to compromise on privacy or space just because the real draw is outside. And then there's the actual selling point. The house backs directly onto the Black River, with its own private dock and bulkhead. So getting a boat in the water takes about as much effort as walking out the back door. For anyone who fishes, hunts, or just wants to spend weekends on the water, this is close to the dream setup. Waterfront access without the waterfront price tag that usually comes with it. So why is it still sitting unsold? Georgetown itself has a long history built on rice plantations and the timber trade, and much of the surrounding land, including the Black River Corridor, still carries that old low-country character today. It's flat, marshy, and quiet, which could be the appeal for the right buyer, and exactly the reason it's a hard sell to anyone hoping for a busier, more urban lifestyle. And that's why it's getting no buyer. Contemporary cozy. Kalamazoo, Michigan isn't a haunted or stalked house. It's a custom-built 5,374-square-foot modern home on a half-acre lot, listed for $281,000. And on the surface, it might be the single easiest house on this list to actually want to live in. The kitchen alone does a lot of the selling. It has a spacious layout with a desk, a breakfast bar, and a dedicated eating area, plus walls of windows that flood the whole downstairs with natural light. The kind of kitchen most buyers only see in new construction show homes, not in a small Michigan town most people have never heard of. The bedrooms are split across 2 floors, with 2 roomy bedrooms on the main level and an entire upper floor given over to the master suite. So there's a genuine sense of separation between the everyday living space and the more private areas of the house. Then there's the detail that keeps getting singled out by anyone who tours the place. A massive library, big enough that it functions almost like its own room rather than a corner with some shelves. Add in a short drive to the shopping, nightlife, and restaurants along Southwest Avenue and downtown Kalamazoo. And this genuinely reads like one of the more livable, move-in-ready houses in the whole countdown. A $289,000 custom home with a library like this would draw a bidding war in a bigger city, with buyers competing on move-in date alone. In Kalamazoo, Michigan, it's simply competing against a much smaller pool of people who happen to be house hunting in that specific zip code at that specific moment. And that is the unglamorous explanation behind why this house is still on the market. It's just a mansion in a place most buyers never think to look. Now, moving on from the house that's unsold because of its location, let's talk about the one that has sat unsold for so long that the sellers eventually stopped trying to sell it as a home at all. S.K. Pierce Mansion. Built between 1873 and 1875 by furniture businessman Sylvester K. Pierce, this Gothic-style mansion in Gardner, Massachusetts was, in its day, a genuine local landmark. It has 10 bedrooms, 7 bathrooms, a steep grand staircase, and lavish interiors. It took roughly 100 workers and a year and a half to build, which tells you exactly how much Pierce wanted this house to be noticed. After Pierce died in 1888, his 3 sons spent years fighting over ownership instead of maintaining the place. And by the time the family finally turned it into a boarding house to salvage some income, the mansion had picked up a reputation of illegal gambling, black market trading, frequent visits from sex workers, and rumors of homicides on the property. By 1965, the Pierce family fortune was gone entirely, and ownership passed outside the family for good. The paranormal reputation really took hold decades later, when residents Edwin Gonzalez and Lillian Otero moved in around 2009 and left again by 2011. Neighbors reported seeing a young boy in the windows despite the couple having no children, and Lillian claimed a dark-haired woman once tried to possess her. It's a story detailed enough that the couple eventually turned it into a book deal, which understandably makes some of the wilder claims harder to take entirely at face value. The mansion sat on the market for 9 straight years before the sellers finally accepted that nobody wanted to live in the haunted mansion of the neighborhood, as locals had taken to calling it. Instead of chasing another home buyer, they sold it in 2015 to Rob and Allison Conti, owners of the haunted attraction company Dark Carnival, for just $315,000, a fraction of the mansion's roughly $1.3 million appraised value. Today, guests can actually book a stay, but only after signing a waiver preventing them from suing over any paranormal activity they might experience. Thanks for watching. Now, check out the videos popping up on screen for more fascinating stories.